Hello and welcome to the 7 Minutes Podcast, episode 8. This is a landmark episode. I'm one of your three hosts, Zack.
This is Angela.
And this is Robert.
And today we're going to be talking about hype, excitement, marketing in video games, with maybe a special focus on E3. But first, let's go around and talk about what we've been playing since we last recorded. Robert, why don't you start us off?
I'm continuing to play Rise, Monster Hunter Rise. It's been really good. Still. Waiting for more updates and more layered armor.
Is it like a service game where they do periodic updates?
It's not really a service game, but they do update it. It's my understanding that the game shipped without, like there's an ending, but, they're supposed to add more to it. So it's going to be getting updates for a while, and I'm sure it's going to get a lengthy expansion like World did.
With Iceborne?
Yeah, I'm sure it'll get something similar. And then, what else have I been playing? I guess a little bit of Mega Man 11. That's been fun to go back to. And I think that's it for what I've been playing lately.
So something of a Capcom kick.
I'm on a Capcom kick.
That's all right. For me, I am continuing to play a lot of Final Fantasy XIV. We had a new patch, 5.5, drop since the last time we recorded. Bliss through all the story content for that, but there's still a lot to do. I want to call out, there has been a series of Nier, as in Nier Automata, themed 24-man raids to do. And those are done, and they were fun to look at, fun to play. The music was great, but they just kind of felt like fan service in the world of Final Fantasy XIV. Like as a crossover, it was not that well integrated and not that satisfying, even for someone who had played Nier Automata.
I was bored watching you play this content.
But even having played Nier Automata, which is far and away the most well-known of the Nier and Drakengard games, I don't know. Things seemed like they were supposed to make sense and didn't, and the whole thing just... Actually, to be honest, they previously done a collaboration between Final Fantasy XIV and Monster Hunter, which had worked really well. I think part of that is just it's easy to fit hunting a giant dragon into the world of Final Fantasy XIV, but you get to fight, I think his name is Rathalos, is kind of a major Monster Hunter monster, but you can do that. You can get you can hang out with a Palico. That worked pretty well. The Nier stuff I'm not convinced by. There's a couple final quests that roll out in a week or two, but I don't know. It was fun to play, but...
Also been playing some Final Fantasy XIV. I am finally officially a ninja. Getting a hang of the... Thank you. Getting a hang of the control scheme. It's a little more complex than when I was... the heck was I, a rogue?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some additional things to learn, but it's okay. Picking it up pretty quickly.
Yeah. The control schemes in Final Fantasy XIV can be hard to wrap your head around in general, partly because it's so customizable, you know?
Yeah, and I'm just not that type of player. I don't care about customizing things. This is probably also why character creators don't really do much for me.
You just want everyone to be Link or Majima.
Yeah. I'd rather have an established character with a personality than kind of a no-name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So our topic today is not focused on a particular game. Could be kind of broad. But, when people think of hype and marketing where video games are concerned, E3 has certainly historically been the big deal. I think exactly one of the three of us has been to E3.
It would be me.
Yeah.
That's right.
So maybe a good place for grounding is maybe talk about your experience of going to E3 for the first time.
Okay. Man, it's been a while since my first E3. I think my first E3 might have been 2014 or 2015. I should know this off the top of my head, but I don't. I think for most of us growing up, if you're in your 30s or even maybe your early 40s, E3 was a major part of just the video game landscape because it was essentially I mean, it still is, but, it's this giant, the biggest show. And everybody gives these announcements that are, groundbreaking, new game or a new system or whatever. So E3, it would always just come with this massive amount of hype attached to it. And so as a kid, I remember seeing updates about E3 and Nintendo Power, and they would always talk about whatever games are going to be coming up. But I was always aware of the fact that it was not for anyone to go to. It was always, you had to be in the industry somehow. And so when I started writing for Nintendo Joe and realized, we have press credentials, we can go, I was like, I have to go. So most of the people who work for the site or who worked for the site at the time didn't live anywhere near California. So I was like maybe one of two people who was in the state. And I just was like, I'm going. I don't care how I get there. And to this day, this is the way I get there. I will take Amtrak. But to take Amtrak from Jack London Station, the way I would do it, so to explain, I didn't have a lot of money to go. So I couldn't get a hotel room. So it was like, especially because during E3 in Los Angeles, getting a room is more expensive than normal.
Yeah.
So I was like, how do I make this work? Because I didn't have a car either. So I decided if I take the Amtrak red eye, I will get there in the morning by the time the show starts, do the show until the evening, and then take the red eye back and get home in the morning. So that's what I did. And of course, the Jack London route doesn't just let you take the train straight to Los Angeles. You have to ride on the bus for like 70% of the trip. And the Amtrak bus trip sucks.
Yeah, it does.
It's not comfortable.
No.
It's hot. The only good thing about it is because I would get on at Jack London, I'd basically be at the start of the trip so I could pick whatever seat I wanted. So I'm always in the back. As I'm talking about this, I'm having a little trouble remembering my first E3, but the trip's the same every time. I get to Los Angeles. It's interesting getting there for the first time because you get off at Union Station in LA and you have to figure out their train system. So the Bay Area has BART, and my only other exposure to a metropolitan transit system, like train system, is LA's. And I feel like the Bay Area is a lot simpler with BART. Because I was like, so blue line, red line, what the hell does any of this mean? I finally figured out how to get to downtown, and then you walk just a couple blocks to the LA Convention Center.
Yeah, I think the Bay Area Rapid Transit, BART to his friends, is probably necessarily a little simpler because like the conduit between San Francisco and Oakland is like central to like the whole hub. Mm-hmm. Whereas I couldn't draw the LA train system off the top of my head, but it's, even though there is Union Station, there's not really like a central through point in the same way in LA. It's more spread out.
So you walking into the convention center, the first year I went, and I don't think I'm misremembering this. I believe it was right before they started allowing the public to come in. I did at least one or two E3s before that started to be a thing, and I remember it was a different feeling going, and there were not as many just quote-unquote normal fans there. It was mostly industry people. Anybody who works at a GameStop knows that there are ways to kind of sneak into the show through working at GameStop, so that's a way that some kind of just on-the-street people find their way in. And I'm sure that there are friends of friends who get people tickets, but so just to backpedal a little bit, some of the talk has been of late, whether or not E3 matters. Like, do we even need E3? And I think if you've never been to E3, that might make it a little harder to understand its purpose and kind of place. But E3 is all about spectacle. So you come into the convention center and there's these monumental displays in front of you. I believe one of the years I went, I think it was when World was coming out, they had one of the monsters in the main lobby, I think. I know that when Nitro Kart was coming out for Crash Bandicoot, they had carts set up. Activision had it right in the lobby. Dark Souls had a display at one point, and I think that was the one where it was a fountain of blood.
That's awesome.
So it's all these interesting things that you see. So maybe, I don't know, like maybe for those who don't know or don't really think about or realize, so E3 is a media event. And the idea is that you're pumping up the media so that the media then in turn is pumped up and goes to talk to their readers and get them excited. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, E3 is very fascinating because you're surrounded by quote unquote professionals, but you're all basically like kids enjoying what is being put on in front of you, this show. And once you get into the main show floor, there's like this center hall that connects two larger exhibition halls. I'm going to forget the sides. I'm not even going to bother trying to name them. All I know is that Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft are in one, and then the other one is more of the third parties. It doesn't matter which side you're on. They're all cool. Again, it's sort of like when you come into the main lobby where you have these different displays. And Nintendo's booth is always incredibly elaborate. And then Sony and Microsoft, when they would bother to go onto the show floor, they have cool booths too, but they're less about the relate it to Disneyland. Like the year that Mario Odyssey came out, Nintendo turned their booth into New Donk City, and I can't think of anybody doing anything that is similar from the other two, main hardware people. Mm-hmm. And Nintendo's always got the largest draw. Even the year that Nintendo did only Breath of the Wild, that was still the biggest draw at the show.
Well, that doesn't surprise me at all.
It was fascinating because I remember that year Nintendo was like, we're only going to show Breath of the Wild. We hadn't seen Switch yet, so you didn't even know the Switch version existed. You just knew it was this Wii U Zelda game. And man, they took the whole booth, they turned it into Hyrule. They had statues of all the characters and the monsters. They had a big cooking pot and just all these Wii U kiosks set up with Breath of the Wild, and people stood in line for hours to play. That's, to me, is what makes E3 so magical, is that you have these cool displays, these moments of playing games that haven't yet been either revealed or actually touched yet by anyone, and it's just incredibly fun. Now, in terms of like fans and how that translates to them, like I said, as a kid, I felt the hype. Like, now, part of that is Nintendo Power was very much Nintendo's propaganda mouthpiece, but it was still just super cool because it felt like you were getting a look into this unique club that you wouldn't be able to be a part of, but having media members describe it to you, you got to feel a little bit like you were.
Yeah, I don't know if the industry needs E3. Certainly there are other ways to get the news out there, get people hyped, but kind of separate of whether it's technically necessary, it is cool to have that opportunity for spectacle. Like, I don't know if Nintendo needed to make The Wizard to make Super Mario Bros. 3 a success, but it's still like a really cool, strange artifact, and it's worth appreciating for that.
Well, yeah, because like Nintendo Land or whatever, Nintendo World in Japan is just open, but there have been other attempts at kind of mixing video games and theme parks. Like I think Poke Park was a thing that was temporary at one point.
Okay.
But the spectacle, the giant statues and the displays, like where else are you going to really see those or find those? You don't have a theme park that you can go to, again, prior to Nintendo World, that you can go to for those things. And so it's really cool and almost unprecedented being able to go to a show like E3, or, I went to PAX West in 2017, and being able to see that level of spectacle. And so even if there are different ways to get the news out, and that has been the case for a while, it's not really just about that.
Yeah, I remember when Nintendo went against the grain and they said, we're not going to do a traditional display or a presentation at E3, like in the Kodak Theater or whatever. There was controversy, and that was the first year they did their direct broadcast for E3. I always looked at it like, well, Nintendo understands that in this day and age, at the time Reggie would have been the one in charge, their front man. Reggie could have said, I'm going to go post up in an Arco bathroom stall, and you can ask me questions while I'm using the bathroom through the door, and I'll answer them. And he could have announced every single game from an Arco bathroom, and everybody on the planet would have heard the news, because there would have been 20 reporters stuffed into that bathroom to hear him talk about those games. So it's like, in terms of just pure pragmatic, dissemination of information, the web makes it easy. I mean, in basketball and football and in major sports, they've talked about how back in the day, if you really wanted to get your name out there, your quote-unquote brand, well, you'd have to go to a city that was a major media center. So you'd have to wind up in New York or Los Angeles. But as the internet has kind of broken down barriers of space because of just the way technology's everywhere, and you can have your phone everywhere and the internet everywhere, that's not the case anymore. You could play in Memphis or Portland and still be a superstar. And it's sort of the same with getting your news out there. If you are EA and you have a press announcement to make, you don't have to do it from a theater. You can do it from anywhere, and the news is going to grab it, run with it, and get it out to people.
The existence of Nintendo Directs and other things like that, in addition to the increased prominence of other shows like Tokyo Game Show or Gamescom, has kind of taken the wind out of E3 sales a bit, even before they skipped having a show last year. And do you think maybe that, like, Nintendo kind of stepping away, defecting from the status quo to be like, we don't actually need to do a presentation, got the ball rolling on, not the death of E3, I don't want to be cataclysmic here, but on reducing the stature of E3 a little?
I think it did. It was definitely the start of everything, because now you have Sony basically. I don't think Sony had a presence at all at E3, the last physical show, if I'm remembering correctly.
There was something like that. Yeah.
Sony in particular, I think, was just like, we're not showing up. I know Microsoft, they abstained from being on the main show floor. They had rented their own theater that was like right next door, basically. And they had the whole Xbox, whatever, some kind of Xbox experience. It just boils down to like realizing that, or for the industry and these companies realizing, we can generate hype without having to engage traditionally. I mean, GDC is another show, Game Developers Conference, that happens in San Francisco each year. And I've been to that a few times now. And one thing I've seen is developers who are like, yeah, we can't afford to rent space in the main show floor, so we'll get a hotel room. And I can't tell you how many appointments I've had at GDC where they're like, meet us at this hotel in this room, and then you can come play a game.
You know what's interesting? That actually reminds me of, I don't think either of you have ever seen halt and catch fire. It was a show on AMC from...
I watched a little bit of it over your shoulder.
Yeah.
Kind of tapped out. Kind of bored with it.
But it's supposed to be about, I think it's called Silicon Prairie, back when there were more tech companies in Texas, like around the early 80s. Mm-hmm. And one of the kind of the pivotal, like, climactic moment of the first season, which has to do with the development of early, like, laptop or notebook, or however you want to call it, computers, portable computers, was... I don't know if it was CES, but it was some kind of like tech expo. But there were like side meetings in hotel rooms where they like demoed like the first MacBook or things like that.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, even E3 was similar. Activision had a hotel room, and that's where we went in to play Crash Nitro Kart.
Yeah, when I did PAX West, there were things happening in some building across the street. I remember, I don't know why that seems like so long ago now, but PAX West was interesting for me because I was there in a slightly different capacity. I was media because I was working for a PR firm at the time, and I was there representing the voxel agents who developed the Gardens Between. And so it was interesting because, PAX has this whole wing on the show floor for indie games, and that's where I was. But this is it's at the same show where the big three are at. Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo all had a presence too. And then you had like third-party devs, and Devolver Games was there, and it was an interesting experience because from the perspective of working it. I'm standing in this teeny tiny little booth because all the indie developers were smushed together, and you had this very small booth space. But even with the small amount of space that each dev was allotted, people went all out, decorating. And there was this game I think it was called Pikarusu. I don't even know what it was. I just remember they were handing out pins left and right, and giving you a bunch of pins, and you could collect them all, throughout the 2 or 3 days of the show. But that particular booth, it drew such a huge crowd on the indie side, and it was so interesting seeing people playing this game. It's weird and it's quirky, but it's drawing all of this attention. And you can go see the spectacle of Nintendo, which had an amazing presence. Unless I'm misremembering that correctly, but I'm pretty sure I remember seeing Nintendo at the show. Or, you could go have fun with all these people playing this weirdo, quirky indie game. They had a good booth. They had a more impressive booth than a lot of the other indie devs. But, I was standing in for two of the people from the voxel agents when, keep things anonymous, but, certain bigwigs from certain developers were coming over and wanting to have meetings with the voxel agents about putting their game on their platforms.
Yeah.
So it was interesting seeing that sort of those business exchanges, and then I was handling appointments for video games journalists and people who I actually recognized, a couple of them who I would give them the media kits, which was just a flash drive with a bunch of media for the game and stuff, and watching them play test the game, and they each had half an hour appointments, and so that was fascinating. And then when I would get time to actually walk the show floor, especially during my lunch breaks, just seeing people getting excited and different activities going on or different tournaments happening. Then there were vendors who were they were selling stuff like plushies, and artists who were there. Oh, the guy's name is on the tip of my tongue. He's I think a Capcom artist. He was there, and I was watching him draw right in front of me.
Was it Shinkiro?
No, I think it started with a C, not Champ. Chamba. Yeah, I think
Jeffrey Cruz, I think it's his name.
I think it was Chamba.
I'll look it up because I'm mispronouncing all of it.
It was something like that. He was drawing in
Jeffrey Chamba Cruz.
I think it was
Chamba, however you say it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was him. I believe he was there, and watching him draw, and then of course that's where I discovered Ruiner. They were in the Devolver booth, and that blew my mind. And
the one indie game you love.
Yeah, yeah. And like I said, the big three, they were all interesting. But one of the most interesting experiences I had, I was on my lunch break one of the days, and I was in one of the local or the cafes in the event center, and there was a Lord of the Rings game that was coming out, something like Battle for Middle Earth or something like that, and these dudes dressed as orcs, I think, came in and were messing with people and doing this just kind of random, off the cuff, just kind of skit, so to speak. But they were just filming these guys dressed as orcs, just messing with people, just sitting at the counter eating lunch. And so it was interesting, just the whole experience. But I think, again, it's not just about getting the news out. It's about the experience of getting together with other people in the industry who are usually fans themselves, gamers themselves, and
well, I think it's probably more multifaceted than a lot of the kind of mainstream gaming media has made it, because the popular quote-unquote hot take has been E3 is dead, there's no point to it anymore. But there's a lot about it, and by E3, really, you can kind of make the argument of any convention. But I run Nintendo, Joe, as has been said before. In my experience running the site, one thing that's fascinating is that you're getting emails from people you've never heard of. All these little tiny devs, all these different studios, sometimes big studios, sometimes mid-range studios, just countless emails.
Or people like me. When I worked for the PR firm, we would be
people.
We would be emailing.
That's who it is.
Yep.
But still, the point is that the PR rep is either for somebody small, somebody big, somebody you've never heard of, and so on. And, I'm sitting there and I only have so many people who write for me. I only have so much time, and I have to kind of decide what is worth covering. And so a place like E3 is interesting because, let's say, I'm going to make up an example here. Let's just say that Yacht Club Games is complete nobodies at the time, and they email me about Shovel Knight. I might not see that email, or I might see it and think, it seems interesting. But let's say I go to E3 and Yacht Club has a booth, and Shovel Knight's sitting there, and I'm like, man, I don't have 2 hours to wait to play whichever game. Oh, what's this? Shovel Knight. This looks interesting. And then I go play it. Well, that's one of the kind of unpredictable aspects of a convention like E3, where you're going to be exposed to things you might not otherwise be exposed to. Mm-hmm. And like, it's not all apples to apples in terms of some of the comparisons I'm making, like with the sports analogy I made, but it's sort of like news, right? So if you are getting your news through social media or even something like Google, as things are more tailored for you, as your algorithm determines, well, this is what this person's interested in, so your content gets geared more specifically to that, you will miss certain things that you might not see otherwise, which is why if you are still one of the dinosaurs that gets a newspaper, the newspaper's not tailoring anything to you. It's, here's all the news stuffed into these however many pages, and you're going to stumble across stuff that you might not otherwise see. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of what being at these shows is like. I mean, for one thing, even if you allow the public to go to conventions, and like in the case of E3, that is now the case, you can spend money and just regular people can go. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, yes, social media word of mouth is important and people discover things through it, but media outlets are still pretty integral to getting the word out there about different things. And so as a media person, it is interesting going to an event versus just getting an email about it. I mean, even when it's not E3, companies like Namco have invited me out to San Francisco, and again, hotels, you know, not, in this case, it wasn't a hotel room. They were in a conference hall in a hotel in San Francisco, and they had all this delicious food out. They had multiple stations with different games that were coming out, and they were like, you just go ahead and play whatever you want, write your impressions.
Yeah, I went to one for Xseed in a hotel.
And, I mean, there is, you know, a little bit of that risk of like, well, maybe I'm just being pumped up because they filled me with food, and now I feel more excited about what I'm playing.
Well, they wouldn't fill you with food if they didn't have some kind of effect. Yeah.
But it's still just...
Buy your own nachos.
I think people are underselling just how much comes from the show as opposed to just the news. You know, it's coloring perceptions, yes, but interactions you might not normally see. I mean, a lot of the people who take the time to go to something like E3, these are like incredibly important executive type of people or creative types like producers and directors and developers who might normally never be in the same space together. Mm-hmm. But because you go through the time and trouble to create an E3, all of a sudden they're there and maybe a new game pops up because these people were talking and they normally wouldn't have been.
Or even just having that exposure to people you would never probably ever have exposure to again. I mean, I was talking to, I can't remember exactly what her role was in the game, nor can I remember her name, but when I was at the Ruiner booth, and my coworker and I were talking to her about Ruiner, and she's like a pretty prominent part of the development team. Rycon Games, like, when am I ever going to get to sit down and talk to face-to-face someone from Rycon Games? But I was, or chatting up people with Yacht Club Games. I remember I was in their booth and I was talking to people there. Or I believe, if I'm not mistaken, because I can't remember where else I would have experienced this, I'm pretty sure this happened at PAX West. There was a Pokken tournament because Pokken Tournament DX for Switch was just about to come out. I think like just a couple of days after the show. And so there were there were like tournaments happening and you could play with people. And I remember the Microsoft booth, because I was really motivated by the free swag, like the pins and the keychains and collectibles and stuff. And so like in the Microsoft booth, you could go, all you had to do was just go through the process of designing your own custom controller. I believe like your own custom like Xbox One controller or whatever.
Do you remember what colors you went through?
No, I wish I could remember what color I made, but...
I'll tell you, it was red and black.
But so long as you did it, they would give you a really nice like pin of like really nice quality that was shaped like a controller. And they were just like, no, just go through and I'll give you the pin.
I do think it's definitely the case. You're talking about like things that these show floors provide that you don't otherwise get. It is definitely the case that some games have made it because, if not necessarily Shovel Knight specifically, but there are games that have made it.
That was a fake example.
I know, I understand. I'm not calling you out, man. But that wouldn't have made it if they hadn't been seen by the right person on a show floor. Whether that's because it caught a journalist's eye and they ended up doing a write-up about it, or it caught some executive's eye and it got, a more prominent position on a platform than it would otherwise have gotten.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like I said, there were executives from big companies that were walking the indie corner, the indie booth. And
we also can't forget peripherals too.
Yeah.
For one thing, something like Wii, that would not be easy to grasp without somebody being there and actually, waggling the controller. Mm-hmm. But even companies like Hori, Power A, Nyko, they have booths at E3, and I've gone and went hands-on with controllers that they were putting out and things like that. And now, this all, once more, it still kind of boils down to semantics, right? It's like, well, you could do that. You don't have to be at E3. They can invite you to this or invite you to that. But I think the industry, because the media is not the same as the industry, right? The media covers the industry. But the industry itself, I think internally, they all, at least I feel like, probably understand why there is still value to E3. For one thing, that logistical part of it that I mentioned, the idea that you're going to have everybody in one place at the same time. It's sort of like, think of your family, right? Like, your family shows up for Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever. It's hard to get everybody together in one place at one time. Mm-hmm. And it's the same with the industry. It's like, you're going to have all these people from all these different developers and companies show up together at once. So, for example, Nyko, Hori, PDP, whoever, they all have these different things they want me to see. Well, if they are just individually, randomly asking me to show up somewhere in San Francisco to come check out their controller, it's all going to be on different days at different times, and maybe I can't show up to one of them. But if they're all at E3 and they're just like, hey, here's my booth, and if you just swing by, you can check out this controller and that controller, that creates a better chance of your product being covered and talked about by the media.
Sure. If your second cousin asks you to come out to visit them, you probably wouldn't get around to it. But if there's a family reunion, you're going to get to see all your second cousins.
Yeah, I think using the analogy of family is an interesting one, but it does kind of work because there are people who expect to see each other year after year at these shows because they're not going to see each other. They don't see each other throughout the rest of the year. They might email if they have any contact, maybe call, but otherwise it's like, yeah, I'll see you next year at the show. There were people like that at PAX West too, like hearing them say like, oh, it's nice to see you again, clearly they were going every year for whatever reason. And
yeah.
There's even stuff like G Fuel. I'm pretty sure G Fuel was at the last E3 I went to.
What the devil is G Fuel?
And you wouldn't know without E3. They're basically...
I know because of GameStop.
Yep, G Fuel is basically a powdered energy drink designed for gamers. And I'm not going to be able to taste this if I don't go.
Why? Why does this exist?
G Fuel's actually pretty good. Plug. You want to sponsor us, let us know.
Yeah, whatever. You drink Crystal Light and Kool-Aid.
Okay, it's tasty,
What's wrong
okay?
with Kool-Aid?
Yeah, just jealous.
Kool-Aid's great.
But, I think, because I keep coming back to this idea of you can do the same thing with less effort. I can give you the news through the bathroom stall if I'm Reggie. Or I can put together a whole elaborate Nintendo Direct and have a booth in, the Los Angeles Convention Center. We talked about this either the last podcast or the podcast before it, but just sort of the idea of, well, you can have every single thing shipped to your house and never leave it and do it that way. Mm-hmm. And what's the difference? You got your food, you got your pair of pants, or you can drag your ass to the mall and actually go look for your pants in a store, or you can go to a restaurant to eat. Mm-hmm. And again, this is all, COVID notwithstanding. I understand that part of it, but just this is a trend that's been happening since before COVID. Mm-hmm. And I feel like with E3, it's like, can you do this in a cheaper way, a simpler way? Sure. But why live life without any flavor? Mm-hmm. Like, you are in an industry that eclipses Hollywood in terms of the amount of money that you draw.
I think without any flavor is a bit of a unsupportable hyperbole, but I take your point. Like, there is something lost when you don't gather, when you don't make the time for events, etc. Mm-hmm. That's definitely true. Mm-hmm. I have I have an E3 related question. We could at some point talk about things other than E3, but I'm not ready for that. I have an E3 related question.
Okay.
Which is like more from like the audience perspective. Like, Robert, before you started going to E3, and certainly for me this whole time, like my experience with E3 has been like there's a big news drop, or E3 happens, and then all the magazines are featuring whatever it was that was big at E3, right? And there's some amount of anticipation or excitement. How acutely do you remember like your biggest moments of excitement? Because like for me, I'm trying to think of like when E3 made the biggest impact on me. And I think what stands out the most is the era of Nintendo where they were coming out with the DS and the Wii. It felt like there were these like huge kind of like revolutionary new things that I just wanted. I was like clicking around trying to find every little morsel of information and just getting really hyped up for those particular things. But yeah, I'm curious for both of you if there's like particular like E3 news or E3 conferences that really stand out for you.
Yes.
And so what?
Yes. For me, it was Twilight Princess. When they announced Twilight Princess, I still remember talking to Robert in the car about Link's new look and telling him I wasn't sure about the chainmail. I was like, oh, I don't know if I like the chainmail or not, which I eventually ended up loving. I think Twilight Princess Link is the second best design after Adult Link and Ocarina.
Something his nose.
In the game,
His big fat tomato nose.
Yeah, in the game, and the drawings looks great, but no, but that whole announcement was insane. It was crazy. I mean, they talk about how, and like on the show floor when they announced it, grown men crying, like just like openly, like openly weeping, and I just think that that's amazing. And
like Toon Link killed their family.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is sometimes just because I love it so much, I will just randomly pull up that reveal video on YouTube. You know, Shigeru Miyamoto comes out and they were like, it was something along the lines of like, you know, we have one last thing we want to show you. And like it's like the Conan the Barbarian theme song, I think is what they set that trailer to. And, you know, and especially too following on the heels of Wind Waker, you know, and the, you know, the beautiful cel shaded look. And then you're looking at this at the time, you know, hyper realistic trailer. I don't know if anyone in the crowd immediately thought this is Zelda, because you have that rider way in the distance, tiny little person in the distance, and then, you know, like as he gets closer and closer, they reveal that it's Link, and then the crowd just explodes, just like people screaming and cheering, and I remember feeling that excitement when that was announced.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It was big.
Yeah.
For me, the Twilight Princess one is pretty impactful. Not sure if there's any like one specific E3 where I remember. Well, I guess the E3 where Donkey Kong Country Returns got announced for Wii. I remember that year just being packed with all sorts of games, because Wii had that period where everyone was like, Nintendo has abandoned its core audience and they were obsessed with like the Wii Sports style games. And I mean, that was kind of true to an extent, because there was a little bit of a drought of like the quote unquote hardcore games. But that E3, Nintendo clearly just was not wanting to hear that anymore. And they were like, here's everything you could ever want outside of a new F-Zero. And that E3 was packed. But that's a more modern one. In terms of older ones, I mean, Ocarina of Time, that was a big deal when that started showing up. Oh, I guess I'm useless for an answer for this one. I can't think of a specific E3. I just remember, though, that each year with E3, it was like all these games you didn't know about, and seeing the coverage of it in the magazines was just so tantalizing.
I do remember prior to the release of Breath of the Wild, even though that ended up not being my favorite Zelda, the Nintendo Treehouse, because there was like the Nintendo Direct and then the Treehouse following the Direct during E3. And I remember because they would show some gameplay and then they would cut to another game and then they'd show more gameplay. And I remember just sitting there glued to my phone waiting for more gameplay.
Yeah.
That one sticks out in my mind.
I was definitely excited for Breath of the Wild too. I don't know there's a particular like single event or point of news that got me super hyped for that one. Oh, actually, I remember seeing that vista. That was like clearly a reference to the original Legend of Zelda. You know, like on the plateau, looking out at all of Hyrule, kind of like. I mean, because you know how I feel about the original Zelda, and so like that was like the signal of like, oh my god,
yeah,
they haven't forgotten the good Zelda.
Oh my god.
Well, you know, E3 is. I just think it's this special place of just different types of people all congregating together. And that first year when they let all the fans in, they did it wrong. Oh my god, it was hard to get food. It was just so stuffed feeling. But then the second year after fans started to come in, they figured it out a little better. And it was kind of cool seeing just normal fans able to enjoy all the games being on display. I think that you can't ignore the evolution of technology and the impact that it has on how we disseminate information and blah, blah, blah. So it's probably necessary for E3 to evolve and kind of grow. And maybe letting fans in is a good way of, you continue to have the media show up, but also allowing for that word of mouth on social media that's just kind of integral now to spreading hype. And it was just cool seeing regular people they've never been to E3 before, and they're seeing, whoa, this is what they do every year. It's like, yeah, every year they transform these spaces that it's just a giant empty hall. But all of a sudden you have these different developers who show up with, like, Sega had Sonic's car from the Sonic racing games, and you can actually sit in, it was like a little replica of the car. And, the swag, which Zack is not appreciative of, but the swag is pretty cool.
I'm not completely against swag. I'm against swag for swag's sake. But I remember having when Phoenix Wright came out on the DS, they came out with like this special stylus that was like a pointer.
Yep, I have that. The finger pointer. Yep.
Yeah.
And then there was like a little. It was supposed to be like a screen cleaner or something that said objection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had those. Yeah, I think because Capcom made too much swag, and so if you bought Phoenix Wright directly from their website, they shipped those with them. Yeah. The point is, I'm not an absolutist when it comes to swag. It just has to clear a certain bar. It's just not as automatic a process as it seems to be for certain brands for the two of you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, branching into the other part of what the podcast is supposed to be, which is hype building, because it's all kind of connected, right?
Yeah.
When you were asking me about favorite E3 just now, my brain, of course, went to something not E3, and I remembered the VHS tapes that Nintendo would send out.
I was going to bring that up, yeah.
So I think one of the things that was really special about hype building before the internet as we know it now, and every time I say this, and I explain it in the podcast, but when I think of before the internet as we know it now, I mean before we had web-enabled phones and before we had social media. Because I know that there were people who were online in 1995 in chat rooms or whatever, posting on a wall somewhere. But when you were, in the early 90s, mid 90s, even into kind of the late 90s, most of us, especially middle class kind of people, were not online. So you depended on getting Nintendo Power or EGM or GamePro or whatever to get your news. And so when E3 news would show up, it felt really special because it was like, you have the kind of standard coverage each month, and then here's E3, and all these bombshell reviews come these bombshell news stories come at you. But even when E3 wasn't going on, there were different things that would happen to build hype, and Nintendo, through Nintendo Power, would send you VHS tapes that had footage of games that were coming out. And I think my absolute favorite tape that I was able to get, because I didn't get very many, because they stopped doing it around the time that we were reading Nintendo Power, but that Banjo-Kazooie VHS tape, oh my god, because now it's harder for today's fans because everything's HD and spectacular looking, but think what you will of Rare's gameplay, which I personally love, but the way Banjo-Kazooie looked, that was amazing at the time. Like, Mario 64 has its charms, but Banjo-Kazooie showed up and was like, we're going to do what Mario does and look 10 times better. And that VHS tape was mesmerizing. Like, the gameplay just looked like nothing I'd ever seen up to that point.
What is with that look, Zach?
Yeah, Zack's smirking.
Yeah.
He's got something to say. Something mean.
Mm-hmm.
There's something to be desired when it comes to Rare's character designs from...
Oh my god. What is your problem with Mumbo Jumbo? Yeah. The answer is that there's no problem with Mumbo Jumbo.
That is not
Yeah.
my answer.
You're offended that Banjo's not wearing a shirt? He's just wearing shorts?
I'm not offended that Banjo's not wearing a shirt. I really just do not get the appeal of Rare's character designs pretty much across the board.
It depends on what designs you're talking about, but there are some really good ones.
I'm going to say straight up, no game, I don't care what generation since N64, no game has topped the water droplets in Banjo-Kazooie. So when you swim and there's the little drips in the water, no game has come close to that level of detail.
Do you think maybe this is like some weird nostalgia talking? Can you consider for a moment that if you're telling me that an N64 game has better water effects,
that water effect in particular, of course, it was expanded upon in Banjo-Tooie when the surface of the water was wavy, and then there was the little splashes in it.
let me just extend the offer to like edit this out to avoid you embarrassing yourself.
Oh my God.
I am a man who owns every console, but for like a Neo Geo or whatever, every kind of main system I own, and I've seen quite a few impressive games, and I've seen water in games that has impressed me, but man, the droplets in Banjo-Kazooie, yet to be topped.
So I'm gonna turn to Angela here, because Angela, no matter what game is being played, if there's water on screen, she will comment on its quality. So I know she's paying attention. And I also know that she, in her formative years, did get to see and experience Banjo-Kazooie. Yes. So, Angela, feel free to expand on this any way you like. But fundamentally, the question I need answered is, does Banjo-Kazooie, in fact, have the most impressive water effects of any video game ever?
No, but the water droplets... I understand Robert's appreciation for that.
Hey, and I'm specifically saying the water droplets. Like the water in Twilight Princess, wow. The water in Mario Sunshine, double wow. But those little droplets.
He's still talking about like 15-year-old games, right? Like,
yeah. You show me a game that has better water than Mario Sunshine. I
can turn on Assassin's Creed Origins right now.
Probably has some boring algorithm generated blah blah blah.
Yeah, it was really nice in Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah, the water's really nice in Ghost of Tsushima.
Anyway, we're talking hype, thank you. So, back to the VHS tapes.
Oh.
Having those sent to your house, I don't know how to describe it. Like, I think part of it is also just being a kid, but it felt like you were getting top secret information or something. Like, it felt like you were being offered this portal into a secret world.
Well, yeah, because I remember thinking how exclusive E3 felt. I remember thinking like, how can I get to E3? How would I ever be able to get to E3? And I have just, unfortunately, E3 has always coincided with just times I couldn't go since I've been writing for Nintendo Joe. But even like at making it to PAX West, I mean, it felt like it has a very similar feel and setup, and so it just kind of felt like, wow, like I'm right here on the show floor with people from Nintendo and people from the big three, and I remember too, like the after parties, even that felt like, wow, like this is stuff that I've heard about or seen, in the past, and now I'm actually participating in it. Like we got invited to an invite-only show from IGN, and it was also celebrating whatever anniversary at the time it was of BioShock, maybe like 10 years or something like that. And so it was a themed party, and so it had decor, giant statues of some of the characters and enemies.
Daddy.
Yeah, there was a Big Daddy there, and what were they called? Little Sisters? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been a while since I played, but yeah, so they were there, and it was kind of supposed to be kind of like a period set, like period inspired party, and like the music and everything, and so that felt really cool. But like being at this exclusive, IGN invite only party, and talking to people that were big in like the Smash competitive scene who were there. and stuff like that. Just like people who, again, it's like when would I ever know these people unless I got really good? Got better at Smash and was suddenly part of the competitive Smash community, like, or I was writing for IGN or something like that.
Yeah.
My greatest E3 celebrity interaction was meeting Charles Martinet.
Oh, that's pretty
The
cool.
voice of Super Mario himself. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it. I think that's how you say it. So
Could be.
I think
he's Canadian.
It was the New Donk City year. So Odyssey had just come out. This was pre-COVID, so forgive me for being a heathen. But I was sick as a dog. My throat was on fire. Pretty sure I had a fever. And I think it had developed as I was going to the show. So I'm like on the bus and then the train dying.
It's like no real choice to turn back.
Get to E3, still dying, but I'm like, I'm gonna power through it. So I'm walking, and this the show had just started, and I'm entering Nintendo's booth, and this giant crowd of people is kind of coming at me, and I'm sort of pushed to the wall, and then I turn to my right. And there's Charles Martinet just standing in front of me. And you recognize him the second you see his face. So I'm like, oh my God, Mario's in front of me. And so he sees me and he smiles and I shook his hand and I said, hi, I'm a big fan, whatever. And the show had just started, so I had nothing to give him to sign. I happened to have a Sharpie with me. And I was like, what the hell can I give him? So I gave him my E3 badge. It wasn't the actual part that has your name on it. It was... Each year, a company will put some kind of insert into the badges at E3. So whatever the insert was some Sega thing. I had to sign it, so I got his signature, and that was pretty awesome. I don't think I've ever met any other celebrities at E3. I think having well, I know they still show up, but that's another part. Not to go back to E3, but that's another part of the hype building is having the celebrities who kind of show up as well, because it's like, well, if you have frickin' whoever, some famous person come and play a game and then they talk about it.
Look at Keanu, right? Look how much buzz that generated.
Yeah.
Him showing up.
Oh, yeah.
Quick fact check. It is, in fact, Martinet.
Oh, I feel good.
He is of French descent and went to UC Berkeley.
Oh, did he? Huh. Almost like someone we know.
Almost like. To go back to the videotapes for a second, speaking as someone who did have some form of internet earlier, I didn't have, America Online. We had Prodigy before we had proper internet, and I remember spending time on message boards and so forth, and you could get information there that you wouldn't get otherwise. But even back at that time, those other people on those message boards, it's not like they had a direct conduit to inside information. It's all still just secondhand of people getting their newest copy of EGM or whatever. So it was still... even for a household that had internet, those videotapes were still special.
Yeah.
I remember, I got a couple of them. I don't remember what one of them was. I know one of them was Donkey Kong Country, though, when they were promoting that.
I'd love to have that one. Yeah, I think I have Star Fox 64, Banjo-Kazooie, and man, there might have been a Diddy Kong Racing one. I can't remember. Those are the three that stand out. We had three.
I swear I thought we got... a DVD or something with the Twilight Princess trailer. I know we got a CD. We got a couple music CDs in Nintendo Power. One for Twilight Princess and one for the Smash Bros. Symphony, but Smash Bros. Melee. But I swear I thought we had gotten a trailer DVD for Twilight Princess, but maybe
I don't
I'm wrong.
remember that myself.
It's interesting how... going back to the early 90s, how in the dark we were. The Super Nintendo came out in the US I think late 1991, and I don't think Nintendo Power even talked about it at all until mid 1991. Because my only source of information for this stuff more or less was Nintendo Power. It was only when Nintendo started deciding when and how they wanted to market it and introduce it that I even found out this was going to be a thing. And that's so different from, people now have understandings of what when's the next console coming out. But at that point, I don't even know that I knew at age 10 or 11 that next console was a thing that was going to happen. I
kind of wonder what is, quote unquote better. I remember the other day, Masahiro Sakurai for Smash Bros. He had posted He had posted something. I don't remember what it was, but it was in his house. And somebody had zoomed in on some portion of the photo and said, if you look, you can see his cat.
Fucking weirdo.
Yeah, and I'm just like, so we've gone from like what Zack's talking about with, it's 92 and Nintendo Power is barely starting to talk about Super Nintendo being out to 2021 and you have maniacs who are zooming in on photos looking for details. Or like, God bless you, I'm not judging you, but like data miners who go into an update and pull this and that and say, looks like this is coming, this and this. And it's just like, you've gone from like knowing maybe nothing to knowing just like, I don't give a crap that you can see his cat. And it's like...
It's just the like data mining and stuff and constant leaks. It's
those I question a little bit. Leak in quotation marks, I say, but...
It just spoils the fun. And it's just like, I can
Says
wait.
you.
I am a patient person and I know not everybody likes surprises and whatever, but I feel like this is... I think it's a symptom of a greater problem of this society we're living in. We live in a society, but the society that we live in, where instant gratification and no patience, no real appreciation for like the slow craft of things. It's just now. And so that build up and that hype. And I mean, like, there truly is something special about those moments. I mean, the Twilight Princess reveal. Like, you would not have had grown men crying in the crowd if they knew it was coming. It just wouldn't have happened. And it's just such a special thing to have these surprises and have these sudden announcements and things that just come out of nowhere. And it just feels so lame and so... I can't even find the right word to describe it, where it's just like, it's coming.
We could unplug to some degree and choose not to, which doesn't mean it doesn't suck, but like it's hard not to pay attention to it. In the case of the Sakurai cat thing, I almost want to blame Phil Spencer for that. Do you remember like when the Xbox Series X got announced, people realized that Phil Spencer had like an Xbox Series X like on display on his bookshelf in the background, and just nobody noticed or knew what it was.
Was it the X or the S?
Might have been the S. It was one of the two of them.
It was just in plain sight. Nobody knew.
Yeah.
I mean, and then don't get me wrong. I mean, that's kind of fun, but it's also intentional, right? Like, he knew it was back there.
Yeah.
And like after the fact, somebody's going to realize. But when it starts getting into the cat thing, and to me, it's like, I feel this way about a lot of things. It's like kind of everything in moderation, right? So it's like maybe not knowing nothing. I mean, I think I'd prefer going back to that, like the era of my childhood where video game information, how it was sent out at that point, but to the extreme of how it is now, where it's like entitlement in a way.
Yes.
Like, I need to get this. You have to give me this information. You almost kind of see it with Nintendo Directs. Now, believe me, I've complained when Nintendo has gone hella long without giving an update about projects that they're working on. But at the same time, it's like, every time Nintendo does a Direct, it's a big deal because they don't do them that often. Like, you wouldn't pay as much attention to them if they were more frequent. I mean, even Sony has kind of realized it, right, with their State of Play broadcasts that they've been doing. Now, I've actually not sat and watched a Sony State of Play. I don't know if it's as good as a Direct.
No, they're just as boring as the Directs have been.
Says you. But...
Angela, back me up on this.
Well, I mean, I think the Directs are interesting, but I don't know if the State of Plays are interesting.
I don't think I've actually watched one. I think the only one I watched, I'm not sure if it was a State of Play even. It was... when I was working for the PR firm, it was like a Sony Paris, some sort of, I don't even remember what it was. Something having to do with like a Sony Paris thing. But we knew that The Gardens Between was going to be announced, and I think that may have been the announcement that it was coming to PlayStation. Regardless, that was big for us, and so we made sure to tune in.
Yeah.
But that's the only kind of thing that I've watched from Sony like that.
I don't know if I'd say entitlement. Certainly there's some amount of conditioning there, right? Because part of the reason Nintendo or Sony, whoever, like, is putting on these shows is they want us to be hyped up for whatever is going to be announced. So if what they announce is boring, people are going to be a little bent out of shape about it, you know? It's not fair necessarily to expect there to be a new Smash announcement every time Nintendo opens their mouth, right? But like, there's a certain amount of expectation when an event like that happens, that what is announced, like what the event is for, is going to be worth the event. And so there can be some kind of like disappointment when that doesn't happen. The other thing is, like, for both those cases, like, Sony just came out with a new system last year. There aren't that many exclusive games for it. Nintendo had a really strong lineup when the Switch came out, and they've kind of been coasting since then, you know? So like, people are like,
able to get away with it too.
yeah, so like, what next? Where's Metroid? If not Metroid, where's something, right? So people are like,
Bayonetta 3.
it doesn't have to be a direct. They just just give me something here,
Are
right?
we
So
gonna
like,
get
that's
another Star Fox? Are we gonna get another
And you call
F-Zero?
We got Balan's Wonderland. I mean, what more do we need?
I mean, you
Yeah.
can call that entitlement, but like, the whole premise of the games console is you're going to have games that you're excited by that you can buy for it.
Well,
so
what-
if Nintendo's not delivering, is it really fair to call that entitlement if people are upset about it?
That's not necessarily what I'm saying, though. I'm talking about entitlement in the sense that, like, you're owed information and that you're owed it all the time. And it's like, well, this isn't your government. This is a private company making entertainment products. So, like, do you deserve some information because you bought their $500 piece of hardware? Sure. I mean, it's reasonable, but it's like this idea that, like, I need to just get everything right now, and once I get it right now, I need it again in a day.
Well, I mean,
And,
look at like Animal Crossing, right? I mean, that is a game that is we already knew Nintendo was gonna drag that one out for years. You get new content every month, seasonal stuff, but people were already data mining it and trying to find what's coming down the pipeline. Oh, like, I think, for example, someone found the code for Brewster in there, and it's like, that's cool. I do hope that they bring Brewster, but also this is not the game where I really feel like you need to go data mining to see what's coming. Like, just let it happen, and you get surprised by stuff and whatever. It's just, again, this feeling of, I need to know now. I need to know what's coming now.
I will temper what I'm saying by pointing out that I am aware when I have contradictory views on things, because I love tcrf.net, the cutting room floor, and all that is data miners going into games and saying, hey, did you know that this is in here and this is in here? The rare stuff with the ice key and the stop and swap, all that interests me. I think my problem is people.
Although,
just like annoying personalities online crying about things is where I start getting irritated.
Like the stuff about Banjo-Kazooie that you're talking about, I mean, we didn't know that when the game came out or before, though, right? Like, all that information came out post the game's release.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying, like, I'm complaining about data miners going in, but I like data mining because I'll enjoy TCRF. But
yeah.
I'm just saying that.
Well, you can not mine the tool and still have a negative opinion about how the tool is used. Right? Like, it doesn't have to be you're against data mining. You're against, or you're annoyed by data mining as a way to get information before a company is going to announce it, not information that a company never announced.
Yeah.
And I find that inconsistent.
I think I've seen people discussing leaks and stuff, and, how it impacts the state of hype that we used to be in, and, prevents a company from announcing its own games when they're ready to do so. And a lot of people do have, I think the word entitled is a very good way to describe it, this very entitled mentality. And a lot of them are just kind of like, anti-corporation, which I agree with to some extent, but it's basically just like, they're a big company, who cares? What does it matter? They're still going to announce the game. People are still going to buy it. They're still going to get the sales, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just like, I don't really care about that. I don't care that they're a big company, and like, it's still impacting your ability to enjoy, the surprise and looking forward to something coming down the line. And yeah.
Like, look at the Nintendo leak from a few months back, where they got hold of this massive amount of data from Nintendo. And all I can kind of think as I'm looking at it is like, okay, it's cool seeing sprites that weren't used and whatever, but I don't know. It speaks to sort of internet culture where it's like, people have this idea that like you need to know every single little thing about everything and everyone. And it's like, what if, just for argument's sake, there was some email that was turned up in the data leak and somebody said something that someone found questionable 30 years later. It's like, and then that becomes a controversy. It's like, I don't care. It's like people's opinions and feelings are their own. If you choose to share them, then you share them. But like the way people want to just get into every little detail sometimes, it starts going overboard. It's like, wow, you zoomed in on a photo to stare at Sakurai's cat and tell people, I saw his cat. It's like, dude, get a hobby.
Yep.
Are the two of you familiar with the expression, information wants to be free? Have you heard that before?
No.
I think it was a more common expression, maybe in pre-social media days. I might have the timeline a little off, but the idea, like, there's a kind of like, I don't know, there's a bit of a moral claim being made by people who say that, which is like you should want to share information, but a bigger part of it is like it is just the nature of information to be shared, to be distributed. If you have a network of a bunch of different people, someone's going to discover a thing, it's going to get told to people, it's going to be told to other people. It's kind of related to the idea, like, have you guys heard the expression, 3 people can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead? Yeah. So like, it's just hard to keep information buttoned down. And the easier it is to convey information, the more people that know something, the more likely it is to just get out there.
Well, yeah, I mean, look how, game releases now will be discovered for like through trademark registration, or like something was listed on Amazon, or the Korean ratings board, just rated blah, and like I've reported on plenty of those stories myself, but again, it really is more of the advent of the internet and social media and e-commerce and different things that now again kind of contributes to the spoiling of surprises.
Well, kind of in the same wheelhouse as this, what we're talking about is in terms of hype, the 24-hour news cycle, which really now is every hour there's news, and it's all day, every day. And going back to the idea of like E3 being dead, this past E3 when there was no show, everybody decided we're going to do our own showcases. And you had all these different publishers who did their own little broadcasts. And I remember more than one media personality kind of commenting saying, now I feel kind of overwhelmed because it was like a 2-week marathon, if not longer, of just, showcase after showcase after showcase after showcase. And like that kind of opened its own interesting Pandora's box of like, well, now you got your wish. There's no E3. Yep. And now it's, everybody and their mother with a showcase. And how are you supposed to pay attention to all of it?
Yeah.
You can see how something like E3 maybe acts as a bit of a filter. So like not only do you have maybe experiences you wouldn't have otherwise, but it also maybe kind of settles the noise a bit. Because let's face it, not everything that shows up at E3 is good. And not everything that shows up at E3 is necessarily worth reporting. So
it's like you have it in 3 days. You've got 3 days to announce your stuff, and that's it.
Yeah, if you were a games journalist, it was always the case that if Nintendo decided they wanted to announce something on some random day, that it would have to be your business to cover it. But it is more the case now that Nintendo is likely to be like, hey, 2 days we're gonna announce some stuff. Be there. Whereas, in 2005, that just would not have happened. There would have been like very specific windows, very specific events.
Yeah.
We're probably getting close to the end of this, but I would like to say that one hype event from my childhood that I wish still existed is Nintendo's Space World.
Yeah, I forgot about Space World.
And so, for those who don't know what it is or was, Space World was basically Nintendo's E3 in Japan, and the public could go to it. So Nintendo would just, I'm not sure how long it would last. I don't know if it was over multiple days or if it was a day, but they would take a convention center, set up all their games and systems, and people could come and try them out.
Why did they call it Space World?
I don't know. Maybe it makes more sense in Japanese. Like, I don't know what the name actually meant.
You remember that trailer, I think it was from Space World, of Link and Ganon fighting? I think it was like a GameCube tech demo or something.
Yes, and that was before Wind Waker.
Yeah.
And so when Wind Waker came out, when they were announcing it, that trailer was such a problem for them. Because it was, quote, a tech demo.
Yeah.
And then you got Cartoon Link, and everyone was like, wait, so you could give me the game that looks like this, but you're giving me Wind Waker. Now, granted, I love Wind Waker and everything worked out, but at the time, it was so disappointing.
Yeah, it was cool because Link and Ganon are fighting. Link and Ganondorf are fighting, and I think like Link gets knocked back, and he like tosses his shield aside, and then takes a Master Sword in 2 hands and like runs a Ganondorf at it. But it was so cool. It was like, wow, I've never seen Link be that hardcore before.
Well, the other memorable Zelda trailer from Space World is, I think it's the 97 tech demo of what would become Ocarina, where Link is fighting some kind of metal knight thing. And I believe Nintendo said they whipped that up pretty quick before E3. And I had written a history piece about Ocarina of Time, and I remember as I was researching it that some journalist, I forget which magazine it was, but they scoffed at the demo and said, there's no way that that's gameplay. Like, that's going to be probably an FMV, in the game, but the game's not going to look like that. And they were like almost scandalized that Nintendo showed it. Like, you can't tell people that that's what Zelda's going to be. We all know it's not going to look like that. And then Ocarina of Time is way better than that demo ever was. Yeah. But it speaks to how it speaks to what an evolutionary leap N64 was, because journalists were sitting there like, oh, I mean, we've seen Mario 64 and that looks great, but look at this. Oh, it's not going to look like that. Mm-hmm. And then that was not the case. It ended up looking better.
Yeah.
So I never paid that much attention to Space World, but one thing that I don't expect it to come back. I don't even know. Anyhow, this I think would have been before either of your time, but when Sega was promoting the Genesis in like the late 80s or around 1990, at least at some malls, I think they did like a tour of malls around the country, and one of them was the Del Amo Fashion Center in Torrance, and there was just like, kiosks where they'd be showing off like Altered Beast or whatever. This was before Sonic was the Genesis mascot. I think Altered Beast was one of the things they originally really tried to pitch the system with. And I just remember like, the mall was already a cool space to go to. Mm-hmm. It's exciting. And then just to have like video games that looked, they don't look as good as arcade games of the time, but they're still like way better looking than the NES stuff I had at home.
Yeah.
That was exciting. One other thing I want to call out, it's so particular to my own mall experiences, but I also remember, I guess around the same time, going to the mall with my mom and ending up in, it was like, there might be a department store called like Robinson something. I don't remember what it's called. That or Bullock's, but like just some department store, and like tucked away as a display inside the department store in the mall was an NES and a TV and like some weird promo cart version of Mega Man 3. If I'm remembering this correctly, it only had like 2 of the Robot Masters in it, but I remember like sitting down on the floor playing Gemini Man. It was like weird stealth marketing.
Interesting.
But, yeah.
That was another aspect. And, touching upon, again, the idea of being in person versus all the remote stuff that has become the norm now.
Yeah.
I remember being in, I think it was an FAO Schwartz for both of these. The FAO Schwartz that was in San Francisco, seeing Knights on Saturn, and damn, that blew my mind. I remember seeing that, just thinking, is this real? And also seeing Sonic Adventure. Sonic Adventure was also similarly impressive for its time. It's always interesting talking about graphics from back in the day because, I mean, even the crappiest games now are in HD. And, especially with things like Unreal Engine. So, like, I don't know if everybody understands, if you're like more casual as a gamer, Unreal Engine, which you'll probably see pop up on the title screen for a lot of your games, basically it's like, instead of coding and creating all of the game world, all of the physics, all of the textures, Unreal Engine gives you all of that, and you can focus more on fine-tuning and tweaking it, but like the basic core of your game is there in Unreal. And stuff like that was not the norm the way it is now, especially Unreal. Unreal is kind of used for tons of games now, whereas if you were making Ocarina of Time, like, you were coding every bit of that and making it. And so, besides the fact that HD TVs didn't exist in the 90s and flat screens and all that, it's very interesting looking at games now and people talking about, like, for example, like Donkey Kong Country, and maybe not being impressed by it in 2021, but when Donkey Kong Country was new, that was just stunning. Like, you're sitting there looking at your screen thinking, this looks like some kind of cartoon or something. And
yeah, I think for Donkey Kong Country, maybe more than any other Super Nintendo game, really benefits from the fuzziness lent to it by CRTs.
Mm-hmm.
It's really easy to see like the artifacts of like the 3D model posing when you look at it now on an HD screen. But yeah, at the time it looks crazy good.
Mm-hmm.
And even the early 3D stuff, like that lacks HD, was also similarly impressive. Like playing Mario 64 was just mind-blowing the first time you ever saw it booted up. And all the way, I mean, even by the time you get to the PS3 era, and even now there's obviously great looking games, but I would say from N64 up to PS3 was that real sweet spot for just seeing this evolution of 3D gaming and just being perpetually just kind of like wowed. Like, that's something else.
I'm not gonna put up with you excluding PS1 from this. That came out in...
Well, when I say N64, I include PS1.
PS1 came out in like 94, man.
Anyway, that first Crash Bandicoot, oh man, that's another one of those games that stunned me as a kid. My cousin Dominic had the PlayStation, and he either had Crash or had a demo disc with Crash, and I just remember thinking, I wish I could play this all the time. It was just so freaking cool looking.
Yeah, I played that at a demo kiosk at, I don't remember what kind of store. It was like a sound audio supply store at some point. But I guess like PlayStation was part of the dream hi-fi setup.
All right, well, this is a point to wrap things up.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, all right. We may be out of things to talk about, and even if not, like apparently my voice is starting to give, so that might
The
be
8th episode ends with Zack's death.
You've been listening to the 7 Minutes Podcast.
Indeed.
And you are no longer listening to the 7 Minutes Podcast in 3, 2, 1.